2022 was one of the best years the UFC has ever had. That's right. Super fights like Makhachev vs. Oliveira, Edwards vs. Usman, and Adesanya vs. Pereira kept us entertained and coming back for more. But what if we told you 2023 has the potential to be an even bigger year for the UFC? And not just because of McGregor's return, but also thanks to the new star, Paddy Pimblett. Let's get into it. First up, Paddy's role in the UFC having a great 2023. Alright guys, with the recent drama this UFC star has found himself in, you might be confused about how he might contribute to a huge 2023 for the UFC. Well, don't worry, let us lay it out for you. Paddy's had one of the most meteoric rises in the history of the UFC. The promotion knew this guy would be big, guys. We mean they started going ham on the marketing, even leading up to his first ever fight in the UFC. Recently, things have been going so well for the guy. Yeah, we all know how fickle MMA fans are. Last month, the guy was a star, and now he's arguably the most hated fighter on the roster. But
you know what I mean? I do stuff for charity and people still get on my back like I'm the bad guy. No matter what I do, people get on my back.
Guys, just because he isn't in the good books of the fans anymore doesn't mean he's lost his star power. Sure, his last fight didn't go so well, and it definitely damaged his hype train, but you know for a fact, people will tune in to see this guy's next fight, even if only to see him get KO'd. Fortunately for the UFC, this is amazing timing. Yep.
You know me saying, lad, I'm a scouser. We don't get knocked out. Hey, I take that all day.
The prodigal son, Conor McGregor, is returning and he needs an opponent. Do you see where we're going with this? Paddy could hand the UFC one of the biggest fights in their history if he got his wish of facing off against McGregor. Honestly, this is a win-win for the UFC. Next up, the reason why he's the best choice for Conor's return. We've already mentioned how Paddy is a PPV star, so you guys probably aren't having trouble understanding why he versus McGregor would be huge. But guys, there's so much more to it than that. This fight would be the perfect PPV, and honestly, if the UFC goes for it, we don't see how it could fail. It's nothing other than a slam dunk. You guys all know that one of the biggest factors in a successful PPV is how well the fighters can sell a fight. McGregor and Pimblett are both insane on the mic, and you can bet they'd hype this thing up to the skies. Not only that, but this is honestly just perfect timing. McGregor needs a good opponent for his return, and Paddy needs something to fix his reputation. If everything goes well, even in the case of a loss for him, he'd win back the fans during the face-offs and the conferences. Yeah, the UFC could potentially walk out of this fight with two huge stars. Not only is this a win-win for the UFC, but also for Conor and Paddy. Everyone is winning, and we wouldn't be surprised if this fight broke some PPV records. After all, fans would tune in to watch the Mystic Mac fighting a cardboard cutout. Let's take a closer look at why this is the perfect situation for the UFC. Following up, Pimblett vs. McGregor is a win for the UFC. Dana White's promotion is riding high, heading into 2023. They've had an amazing year, and the future is looking amazing, but things could still go wrong, and there are always obstacles to overcome. Now, the promotion's potential 2023 dominance over all the other fighting organizations was pretty much confirmed at the end of 2022, but Jake Paul's signing with the PFL and his potential super fight with Nate Diaz has thrown a wrench in the works for Dana. The UFC's head honcho needs a fight that he knows will outperform the PFL, and even though John Jones versus Ngannou is going to be huge, we all know who the biggest fight in the promotion is. That's right, Conor. Yeah, the timing is perfect, and if White's able to set McGregor up with an exciting opponent, well, the PFL can say goodbye to that #1 PPV spot for 2023. Not only that, but guys, the future of the UFC is Paddy. Think about it. Dana has been nurturing this guy and investing in him heavily, and it makes sense because he's the first fighter since McGregor who's been able to reach such levels of stardom in such a small amount of time. Like we said before, the UFC is in an amazing position where they can salvage his reputation and potentially set him up to fight for the lightweight title, another super fight. Yeah, these two guys are the key to a lot of money for the promotion. Just think about how they're probably going to give Dana the biggest PPV of 2023. Following up, Conor versus Paddy would be a win for both these fighters. Alright guys, we've talked about how this fight would be the biggest PPV of 2023 at least, but how would they benefit from it really? Honestly, how would they not? Being involved in the biggest fight of the year means a lot of money, and Conor's already rich, but this could be life-changing for Paddy. Yeah, the guy hasn't been calling out McGregor for no reason, other than the obvious monetary benefits. Pimblett could cement himself as the UFC's new cash cow if he is able to beat Mac, and we all know how these fighters are dying for some of that Dana White privilege. You can bet he's gonna favor you if you break some PPV records. And as far as Conor goes, we all know the guy needs to win his next fight, otherwise even he won't be able to bounce back. There are only so many times the fans can put their faith in the guy. He needs a beatable opponent, and no disrespect to Paddy, but the guy's been looking really beatable ever since that Gordon fight. A win against this guy shouldn't be a problem for Mac, and if he wins, it'd be the start of a huge comeback. And you know what that means? means lots of money. Following up, how likely is this fight to actually happen? After the way that we've gone on and on about how much money this fight would make, you'd think it was pretty likely, right? We mean, why'd the UFC pass up such a perfect win-win opportunity? Well, the reality is that we're probably not going to see this happen. Conor has bulked up a lot since his injury, and the guy doesn't seem interested in the lightweight anymore. It makes sense. In the last 6 years, McGregor hasn't won once at lightweight, and the way that division is looking these days, yeah, we don't see many guys he could take on. But who knows? The Max certainly seems to like this guy, and he might just give him that huge money fight. He might just turn Paddy into an international sensation, but in the end, it's up to him. Now, we've talked a great deal about how Pimblett is already a PPV star, and the first to reach such levels of fame since McGregor. But how similar are these two guys? Can we really even compare their rises in the UFC? Following up, the rise of Mac is comparable to Pimblett's. Alright guys, Conor is a legend in the UFC, and the man gets a lot of hate, but you've got to remember, he was a freak of nature, and no one could stand against him. Now, before you guys head to the comments, let's make it clear that we're not putting Paddy on the same level as the Irish ex-double champ, but you've got to admit, there are definitely some similarities. For one thing, Conor's rise in the UFC was faster than anything we had seen before. The guy was making waves since his very first fight. Remind you of anyone? Yeah, Paddy's been on a similar trajectory, and the guy's been marketing himself like there's no tomorrow. The hype is comparable. Yeah, and the reason both of these fighters were able to generate so much hype so quickly is also something they have in common. That's right, their ability on the mic. Conor's delivered some great moments in the octagon, but the guy's also given us some of the most iconic lines ever. It was clear he was just saying these things off the top of his head. Yeah, we loved it because that was just who the Irishman was, a natural entertainer. Well, we've got to give his young British counterpart some credit. The guy's shockingly similar to the Mac in his ability to riff on the mic, and he's already given the fans some iconic moments. Sure, both guys are definitely comparable in the way they grabbed onto the fans' attention, but is there more to it? Coming up, these guys aren't so similar after all. We've got to accept that the initial rise to fame for Paddy has been very similar to Conor's, but guys, these two men are not the same. Conor was demolishing guys left, right, and center, and Paddy's been struggling with a much lower level of competition. For the Mac, it was one impressive win after another, and the fans couldn't resist supporting the guy, but things haven't been so simple for the baddie. Think about it, he's won his fights in the UFC so far, sure, but they've all been unimpressive, and we're already seeing huge holes in his game. Conor built his hype off beating guys like Aldo and Alvarez, legends of the game, and Paddy has been struggling against unranked guys. At this point, his hype is only alive because fans keep hoping he's gonna show them something crazy as Conor did. Honestly, the hype train for this guy is barely holding on at this point, after that embarrassing win over Gordon. Yeah, in the fight game, you're only as good as your last performance, and pretty much the whole MMA world thinks this man's last win was a robbery. Don't get us wrong, the British star is probably the only fighter we could compare to Conor and his star power, but ultimately they're just not the same. That's it for this one, guys. Do you guys want to see Conor step into the octagon with Paddy? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and as always, like and subscribe. See you guys in the next one.